Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name is Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
And I'm LouiLou. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm recovering from crystal meth and alcohol, and I'm always in search of balance. And each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversations centered around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
But before we do that, please like, share, comment, and rate this episode.
Rate this episode.
Rate.
If you're going to leave comments, leave nice comments.
Absolutely.
If you're going to rate us, 5 stars, no less.
If you can talk shit, just talk shit to your
If you're going to talk shit, yeah.
It's all good.
Talk to someone else.
Hey.
And now the disclaimer, the thoughts and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you. And of course, everything we talk about is for general information purposes only.
General.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I had my first postdoc interview last week. And it went really well. I fell in love with the program like 20 times over. And,
I love that.
But you know, they along with another site are like my number one site. So it's going to be really difficult if I get offers from both of them.
Right on. Did you have to put out?
Not this time.
Okay, that's
not
good.
this time. I had to put out all like myself. You know, what was really interesting about this interview, I thought it was very skillful, is that they got all of the kind of like the necessary things to get out of me, but in a conversational tone. And it came out naturally as opposed to their asking me questions.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I love
it was
that.
very
So
skillful. I was very impressed by them.
Right on. It's like I'm all, isn't it like motivational interviewing, you know, that thing?
Oh, I do know. You know, what's interesting that you should say that is that one of the people that interviewed me is an expert in motivational interviewing.
That's what it is. It's make you feel comfortable, and that it's got to be good for you because it's like
I mean, it was fantastic. I learned a lot about their program. I learned a lot about them. They seemed very during the conversations, they were identifying ways that they can see me integrating some of my research and my thinking into the program. So it was really, really nice.
So they like you, huh?
Yeah. I mean, and I like them, and I met a lot of their postdocs, and they're very happy, and it was really, you know, and it's an amazing program. So I mean, that's what's tough is that I only apply to places that I'm really enthusiastic about.
But that's a good thing.
Yeah, apply to places that I'm really enthusiastic about, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses. So my last interview is at the end of the month. The next 3, are you ready for this? My interviews are from 8 to 5. So 8 a.m. until 5. So I'm just meeting like a bunch of people, and I have a few.
They are like
events.
They are like events.
Yeah, they are. I'm like, I have never sat through like a long ass interview like that before.
Okay, so this is kind of a new experience because you've never done this.
Right.
You know, so did this last interview that you said felt really good? Are you able to kind of
harness that energy?
Harness that and take
you know,
you feel like you learned something?
Yeah, you sound a lot like Benji. Benji's like, oh, you know, like he was telling me he's like really happy that I had that experience as a way to like start all the interviews. But yeah, I feel very confident. I think the other thing that was really clear to me, and then I want to hear about your week.
Oh no, I'm really eating this up.
Yeah. One of the things that kind of like really came to mind for me is like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And the other thing is that I'm really grateful for recovery because that's how I returned back to what I knew I wanted to do ever since I was a kid, which was to be a psychologist. And so in these conversations, I felt like I was talking to colleagues. I felt like I was engaging in conversations that were meaningful to me. And I think that's one of the things that I'm the most excited about is that I'm finally going to be able to get to do the thing that I want to do. And
I love that.
You know what I mean? With the populations that I want to work with. So yeah, I'm feeling really good. There's of course some uncertainty there. You know, there's like, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows who's going to extend an offer?
Isn't it kind of exciting?
It's very exciting.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like there is some uncertainty that's not exciting, like the next 4 years. But whatever.
Yeah, like when am I going to get off house arrest? You know?
And when is this rash going to clear up?
When will it stop burning when I pee?
Oh my God!
Yeah, you know.
I live.
That's all part of my history. Yeah,
I know exactly.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in it.
There is no shame. I've never been on house arrest, but
I've never been on house arrest. But it's like there's always a yeah. It's always a yeah.
There's always a yeah. There's always a yeah.
Like, you know how people in recovery, you have the people that will refer to people who aren't in recovery as normies.
Yeah.
I hate that. I like Yetis. Yetis. You have yet to experience something
I love that.
that's going to take you out.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it is.
Yeah,
It's all good.
Yetis. I'm going to do that. I'm going to call them Yetis.
Well, no, because what it does is this idea of normal and abnormal, like that can fuck with your head. It's like I'm thinking that I'm broken or whatever, so I'm gonna participate in this nonsense, this kind of like language that kind of can take me down.
Of course.
I'm not doing that.
Of course, which is, I know we're not there yet, but that's such a nice segue to today's topic. Let's not go to it yet. I want to hear about your week. I want to hear about you. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning.
Oh my God. Okay. So, you know what? Honestly, it's like I feel as though like I've been inspired at work. I had to make peace. I had been applying for city jobs, and our new mayor put there's been a hiring freeze, and so I took a deep breath, count to 10, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I realized that I'm so grateful for my job.
Mm-hmm.
I initially was working nonprofit, but I didn't go the route of school or whatever. But it was always the plan. And then I got to a place where I realized that it was not for me. And so I'm working retail, and it's not something that I ever really wanted to do. But this job has been great. It's kind of given me the opportunity to kind of live and have experiences that I want to. I mean, it's like the whole 9 years that I was doing nonprofit. In the short time that I've been where I'm at, I money.
Yeah.
So,
cash money could change.
So all that said, this week has been great because I feel like I've accomplished more, and because I do a lot of merchandising, I'm in charge of my department, and it's like I've been motivated. There are times where I just want to throw my hands up and say, forget it.
Yeah.
But it's been a good week. And then home and recovery, like I have a former sponsee. Now he moved to Palm Springs, and through the work that we've done, like he was struggling with finding his voice, and he's finding his voice. And that when you get to see people kind of have the experiences, and
when the light turns on.
Yes, exactly. Because I was like, girl, you need to work. You need to make the decision or the decision will be made for you.
That's right. Yeah.
And he did it. And then when he got there, I told him, I love you, and I don't need to be your sponsor in order to support you, but you need to set up shop. And so he reaches out and he said, I found a sponsor. And I'm like, yes. Mm-hmm. And so I had 4 spaces for sponsees. Now I only have 3, and I'm not. And if I lose another one, it'll only be 2.
Yeah, I feel that.
So basically, I'm good. Mm-hmm. I'm really good. And I also feel like even though there's a dark cloud looming because of everything's going on, I also feel like I'm in a different place than I was the last time who was elected. Like I feel, because there's something about when we collectively have shit that we're going through, because it's easy to mobilize people and motivate people, and so that's kind of exciting. And I mean, being a person of color, we've always had struggles.
Yeah,
I've been saying, it's like, so you have these people are finally.
Oh,
that's good. You have these people.
I accidentally turned yours off.
You have these people that you've been accidentally, bitch. Like you wanted to. No, but you have these people who are finally like experienced some of the stuff that people always experience. I'm all, bitch, this is what it is. So it's like, so it's all good. So yeah,
I did not mean to turn your mic off.
That's okay.
I'm like,
yeah, that's it. It's been a good week.
Okay, so this is the month that for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about the 4 agreements. So this is a book Louis and I both read. I read it years ago, but a lot of people in like the fellowship have read it and they swear by it.
It's interesting because I read it before I got sober. And then I also read it with my current sponsor. And so it definitely each time is valuable, but it's like, I feel like this time I was able to really incorporate it into my life in a way that I hadn't.
Yeah. So let's set the foundation for it a little bit. So here's what I have written down. Yeah. So in the 4 agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz defines be impeccable with your word as using your...
I love that accent.
The accent.
Yeah.
Do you like my Latino accent?
Go ahead, baby.
So actually, let's back up a little bit here. So in the 4 agreements, there's 4 different agreements, and we're going to go through one every week. So the first one is to be impeccable with your word. Ew. And so, Ruiz defines that as using your words with integrity and truth, avoiding harm to yourself or others through your speech. Right. And so he gives the origin of the word impeccability, which means without sin. So Ruiz explains that impeccable derives from the Latin peccatus, meaning sin. So like when we think of sin, what I really appreciated about his definition of sin, he said sin is anything that goes against yourself. Right. So he says to be impeccable is to be without sin. In his framework, sin is anything that goes against yourself or others. To Lewis's point, you didn't even let me get there, but we got the answer right.
I mean, well, this is how excited we're about.
Therefore, being impeccable with your word means not using language to harm, judge, or diminish. This includes avoiding self-criticism, gossiping, or speaking in ways that perpetuate negativity or lies. He also says that words are creative power.
Oh yeah, they're like spells.
Yeah, words can be poison or medicine. He says we should avoid self-judgment and self-rejection. We should speak with intent and authenticity. And so Louis and I are going to talk about how this relates to recovery as we see it. And the other thing I wanted to add to this is that one of the things that I like about like the series that we're going to do is that, a lot of times we end up talking about 12-step.
Yeah.
Right. And what I like about the 4 agreements is that it's not 12-step specific.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so I think
it's like Abilify.
It's like I love Abilify.
It's like
Abilify.
If you're taking something to be better, and it's an additive or whatever. It's,
Are you talking about the antipsychotic?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, I thought about that. No, but the 4 agreements, I always thought like you don't have to. It's not like this thing you need to believe it or you need to change what you believe already. It just takes what you have and kind of like energizes it, peps it up, revs it up.
Yeah. And so I think exactly. And I think that the 4 agreements can be applied to anyone's recovery,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Whether you're in an informal program, a formal program, or you're in like harm reduction, it doesn't matter. If you're on a recovery journey, this is certainly something that I think can be helpful.
And it can also apply to people who are not in recovery.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, to the whole world.
Absolutely.
So being impeccable with your word.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first thought that I was thinking about is in recovery, especially when I'll speak for myself, like when I was first getting sober and even before I got sober, I had a lot of negative self-talk.
Oh God. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was criticizing myself or criticizing other people. I had shame and guilt. And so it was like, I used a lot of words to describe like how I was feeling and thinking and my relationship to others that was actually quite harmful to me. I'm wondering like, what was your experience?
Well, pretty much the same. And what's interesting is not knowing that those words were affecting me in the way that they were. Like that's kind of self-loathing that we do. I thought it was cute because like humor was something that I did, but it was the kind of humor that was like, I was attacking myself.
Like toxic?
Toxic.
Yeah.
I was attacking myself or really kind of taking the things that I felt were my insecurities and playing them up. And I do that now when I host a drag, but it's a little different because
everyone's in on the
because
joke.
It's exactly.
Yeah, everyone's in on the
joke, and I also don't have the same kind of feelings I had behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't cause me to go home after sucking my thumb in the fetal position.
Yeah. It's kind of like, you hear about self-sabotage a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I think there's a way, my sponsor talks about this a lot, that thoughts can become beliefs and beliefs can become habits,
Absolutely.
And there was a lot of self-sabotage in the way that I was like talking about myself and then talking to other people. There's a way that takes energy from you.
Oh God,
right? It's like
you know how we talked about in the past where, becoming aware of things, becoming aware of what you're doing or whatever, takes a lot of energy in the beginning.
Of course. Yeah.
And so it's like, and I feel like this one, that being impeccable with my word, I am constantly, this is something that I'm constantly having to work with, because if I'm not careful, I will slip up, because I've always said that I have this tiny voice. I know it's my higher power. There was a time where it was so quiet because the other voice was so loud, saying, "You aren't enough. You aren't worthy.
Right.
You aren't this. You're that. You deserve to die." All this good stuff or whatever. And so I do this little prayer where I pray that my higher power's voice is the louder voice in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you're saying, because you're making me think about like, so, well, then what are ways that you can be impeccable with your word? And, self-affirmations, as corny or as cheesy as they may sound, I think they do work.
No, exactly.
I think they do work.
I always joke with my sponsors, they're corny, like you always say in the beginning.
In the beginning, sure.
But when you do something and you do it consistently or whatever, it's almost, okay, so it's almost like advocating for yourself.
Right.
It's the same way. In the beginning, it doesn't feel right. Like when you tell somebody, or when you set a boundary and say, it's uncomfortable, but the more that you do it, it becomes second nature. And so that you do it, you absolutely do it. I think in the beginning, one of the ways where I began to start the process was surrounding myself with people who were acting a certain way, the way I wanted to. Like they were showing me through their example. And that was a pretty powerful thing, because I was around these people and I wanted to emulate them. I wanted to be like them. And so.
Yeah, I remember. I've talked about this before, but one of my sponsors was saying, "Anthony, once a day, I want you to say I love you, Anthony." And like, did I ever tell you about this?
No.
And there was this one, like the first time I ever did it, I started crying. Oh. Because I was like, what just opened up?
That.
Yeah, I was like, I love you,
You're
Anthony.
an asshole.
Yeah. You're dumb. My hemorrhoids are acting up. Yeah, but like something, like my heart opened up. It was like, it's so,
Look at you opening your chakras.
I
opened my Anthony chakra.
my heart chakra. So yeah, like self-affirmation, self-compassion.
Yeah.
Self-compassion. It's like, I feel like a lot of times, and maybe I don't feel this way, but certainly it's been my experience, and I've heard it with other people, is that a lot of times that like criticizing voice was put there. It was put there either, I don't know, if you were bullied or if you had parents that were like, not the healthiest.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right. There's a way that we internalize a lot of like the yelling and screaming. And so self-compassion can go a really long way. I think one of the ways that I try to exercise that is, when I'm feeling really uncomfortable, I take a second and I'm like, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like, suffering is universal.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know what? I had started doing this thing before I got sober, and so I know that my higher power was working on me before I came in. But I started doing this thing where I started telling myself the truth, and I knew that I would always say in the beginning, the truth is skewed. Right now, I'm seeing things through rose-colored glasses, but I'm try to be as honest as I can to myself, and not judge what's coming from, and I didn't use those words because obviously I can be more eloquent with it now, but I was thinking it's like, I'm going to be honest about what's going on and how I'm showing up and what's my responsibility. I didn't know that this was all the 12-step stuff. And it's really helped me. I feel like dealing with the shit and the minutia that I dealt with in the beginning, that process, like that beginning was great. It gave me some hope ahead of time.
Yeah. It makes me think about like concepts of God or a higher power. And if I'm, trying to tap into something that is spiritual and bigger than me, I try to think about like, how would that entity want me to feel? Or like, what would that entity say to me, right? And I think when I do that, I'm like tapping into the part of me that can heal, and the part of me that, like the good parent inside of me.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, I'm also reminded here of like when people relapse, for example.
Yeah.
Or, it's like not even use relapse, like when people return to use, or or just
when they fall short,
or they fall short
whatever.
Of their own goals or expectations. And there's this idea of like failure, for example, like I failed, or I'm weak, I'm incapable of doing this, and it doesn't have to be that.
No, not at all.
Doesn't have to be that at all.
Not at all. It's like I always I mean, especially now, I look at it like, okay, so it didn't work out the way I wanted. It's like I can use this as a motivator or a spring form to kind of try to do it a little different.
Yeah, I mean, and and this isn't. I'm not trying to like lean into toxic positivity, but what I am thinking about is, first thing is, if you're alive, you're supposed to be alive.
Oh yeah, exactly.
I
always say, I've heard somebody say, it's like, you know what, you're still alive, so that means that there's something that you need to get done. Like you haven't finished the work.
Yeah, and I know that that's hard to believe when you're in the thick of it. Like when you have, deep, profound depression, when you have warring thoughts. I know it's hard to believe that you're supposed to be here. Yeah. That you're supposed to be here. And
that's a tough one. And I think that you can probably speak more to it, like that clinical depression, whatever.
Yeah.
That's a tough one because it's like, I've had experiences with depression, but it was not clinical. Like, I mean,
you get to it didn't elevate to the,
it didn't elevate. And so, like you said, it is easy for us to say, oh man, you're supposed to be here, when someone's really kind of like,
yeah. Wait, what are you saying?
No, I'm saying, no. What
the last thing you said.
No, what I'm saying is like when you're saying, like, you are meant to be here, you are whole, perfect, and complete, all of that, those affirmations. But it's like, I'm saying the things, but they're not.
Right. And here's the thing, is that oftentimes, we have to do the thing despite how we feel about it.
Yeah, act as if.
Sometimes, I mean, in fact, I would go even as far as to say is that when I am depressed or anyone's depressed, I understand wanting to stay home. I think there's value in that. I understand not wanting to do anything. I understand wanting to stay in bed, not brush your teeth, not shower. I understand that. The only way, well, maybe not the only way to get out of that, actually, you know what? Maybe the best way to get out of that is like alongside of, like talking to your psychiatrist, is activation. You have to get into action. You literally have to get out of bed and go for a walk.
Yeah.
You have to, right? Because that is the thing that brings us back into life, is like existing and going out and being in the world. I'll give you an example. Sundays I meet with one of my sponsees in the afternoon. Let me tell you something. On the weekend, I do not want to exert any energy. No energy. I'm so tired from the week. I don't want to do anything. So I am so grateful that I have this sponsee that like I get up, I get out of bed, and like I get ready and I go to meet up with him, and it's always amazing, But yeah, part of that is like I have to activate, you have to get out there.
Well, I heard this a lot early recoveries. You have to act your way into right thinking.
Yeah, you can't think your way into right acting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have another thought related to
that? So another part of being impeccable with my word, like, so I do this thing, at the end of my gratitude list. I always include my intentions. But my intentions are based on.
I subscribe to your.
My intentions are based on the 4 agreements: kindness, awareness. Sometimes I add stay woke, wokeness, humility, and forgiveness, because they're absolutely like essential for me. But I struggle because I don't know. I want to blame it on whatever, but I can't blame anything on how I treat people.
Yeah.
And my words. I realize that, and it's so true. Like when I'm not nice to people with my words, I feel it. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all. It's like, because I want to be able to talk shit about you and not feel it. But I think that it's so, amazing and that I'm not a sociopath. And I feel
Right. Before we move off this or move on from this, for folks that I think are struggling with returning to use when they don't want to return to use, or when people get sober and then all of this stuff starts to boil up, right? Like unresolved traumas, unresolved feelings and thoughts. There's a way that I think we can be impeccable with our word when it comes to that, right? For example, there was a time when, if I found myself in a situation, I'd think to myself, well, here we fucking go again. I had many relapses. I'm like, oh, here I go again. Here I go again. Here I go again. And I think that kind of language was really harmful to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, I think, looking back, I think the moment that there was a change was when I don't know if I've talked about this, but part of what I stopped fighting. Right. And by I stopped fighting. What that means for me is like, I stopped going back and forth with myself about like whether or not I was right or whether or not I was wrong. And instead I started to think about like, what are the things that I can do that will help me feel better? And honestly, it just had to be anything other than sitting in my room thinking. It had to be something other than like engaging in things that like hurt me. You know what I mean? So do you have any thoughts? I felt like you were ready to say something.
No, I'm listening. Just listening.
Well, and then there's also like the next thing that I think you and I were talking about is like transparency in our relationships with people.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I think the one thing that I do now that I wasn't as effective before is I try to be authentic with people, and I surround myself with people that I really enjoy.
When you say authentic, tell us what you mean.
Meaning like if I don't like you, if something underneath my skin makes me uncomfortable around you, I am going to love you from across the street. I don't need to be in your space. I don't need to bring that to you because it's whatever it is. If I haven't worked through it, I don't need to give you that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I made it a point, like, and this was even before I got sober. I made it a point, like, if there was something going on, I'm just going to steer clear, let somebody else kind of love you, because it's not fair for me to give you that stuff, especially if you you don't deserve it. Like there's some folks I meet, and I don't know that they remind me of someone else that I have something unresolved, and so in the past they have gotten the punishment, and I don't want to do that. And so that's where when I'm saying authentic or genuine and not dishonest, like if I don't feel comfortable around somebody, best thing for me to do is to steer clear, or I will tell you.
Yeah. I love that. Like, it's like in 12-step, we say the people who aren't able to change are constitutionally incapable. They're incapable of being honest with themselves.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think honesty, regardless of what program you're in, honesty is so important because, a lot of us have to repair relationships that we've fucked up, essentially.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And in repairing those relationships, like we can repair them by being clear and truthful and because
absolutely,
clear, truthful communication builds trust.
Yeah,
exactly. It builds connection.
I think that like the folks that are in my life appreciate that. Appreciate that. Like you know where you stand. Like for me, I've always been like, I want consistency. I don't want this wishy-washy bullshit or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Because who's that going to help?
Yeah, exactly. Because I always say, it's like, you know what? We don't owe each other anything.
Right.
But it's a wonderful thing when we,
100%.
I was going to say this to my point about like loving people from across the street. The longer that I stay sober and the more that I do the work, the less they're not a lot of people that I encounter that I have that with. Usually, like I am open in the beginning. I'm open in the beginning to see if it's possible that, a connection is going to go somewhere or whatever. And then I let our interactions kind of guide me.
Yeah. And, what we haven't talked about in a long time is vulnerability.
Yeah.
right? And being truthful can be very vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think it's that vulnerability that allows for people to, what is it? What does vulnerability do? I think vulnerability can be very disarming.
Oh, yeah. But I think that we're fortunate because we're around a bunch of people who are trying to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is not as awkward as if I was in some random space and I was, like in the workplace or wherever, and I was showing up and I was being vulnerable and around folks who weren't even thinking about this idea or a program or whatever.
Yeah. And there's a way that honesty can take the shame and the guilt out of things. It can take, it can diminish the power of guilt and shame.
Oh, absolutely. I have been trying to be, like, for myself, this staunch advocate for healthy sex and sexual connection and all that good stuff. And anytime I have conversation with folks in the program, it's like, I'm all, you know what, especially sponsees, I'm all, what about not judging yourself? Maybe what, I'm always saying the problem is we are not caught up with what we think, but we're caught up with what other people think we think other people think.
Mm-hmm,
and the truth of it is I get to determine what is good for me and what isn't good for me, and I don't have to judge it.
That's right. I love that you just said that, because one of the things that I was thinking of is that we don't need, like, not everyone is deserving of our vulnerability.
No, absolutely.
Right. Like not everyone is deserving of being let in that way.
Hello. It's that I've mentioned this before, that when color girls, like, what
the
is
movie?
When Color Girls, it's like, what
You're talking about the movie,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
When Color Girls, it's like, I wanted to say the whole title is something about suicide. When Color Girls consider suicide when the rainbow is not enough. And one of the characters, it's all in prose, and one of the characters is the lady in green, and she's talking about her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't go deep, then obviously, whatever. But she's talking, her stuff is everything that she's built up, her vulnerabilities, her insecurities, her doubts, all of those things. And so she brings them all with her, and what she's saying is, I almost let somebody run off with it because I didn't realize. And that is the most important thing. And when I heard that, it's like, I'm all held on to that. I have a hard time trusting, and I'm working through this, when someone gives me too much too soon. I think that...
Can you explain that?
Okay, so I've had past experiences with folks who've used whatever they've been going through as a way to manipulate. Like, I lost my job, I'm broke, my boyfriend this, whatever. Can I stay on your couch? Can you feed me? Can you do whatever? Mind you, that's not wrong. We all do what we got to do. But I've encountered folks like where we'll in our first sitting, and it used to happen more often when I was hanging in the bars or the clubs, where all of a sudden I would know everything about them. And it wouldn't necessarily know if it's real or not. But it's like, this is a lot. There's a lot, and I don't know how to receive you. Because your face changes for me as I get to know you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've always thought, like, the you that I see before I know you is the you is based on my perception.
Right.
And as I get to know you, this is why I think that all my friends are beautiful, because I get to know your heart.
Mm.
It's like when you're an asshole, it's like we see it. So, yeah. So to get to the...
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Oh God, there's like so much there.
Yeah.
There's a few things that come up for me. So generally part of that too is like the culture of recovery spaces is that, in general, people are like real all the time.
Yeah.
Like people are like, they're so in touch with like the shit that's coming up for them. And we have very like open and honest conversations about those things. So part of that feels like part of like the culture of recovery, at least in a big city.
Yeah.
The other part of that is it makes me think about, I'm putting on my clinician hat here, is that when someone is very early on in a setting where trust hasn't been established, is telling you their deepest, darkest secrets. What that makes me think of is that this is someone who has porous boundaries, and they have porous boundaries because they weren't ever allowed to have boundaries, or their boundaries were being infringed upon by like primary caregivers or the people in their life, right? I can tell you that when I first came into recovery, I did that a lot, and looking back, I think there was a part of me that wanted people to feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
There was a part of me that felt sorry for myself, you know? And it's interesting because here I am like years later, and gosh, and I'm like the exact opposite now. Like I can, of course, you know, on air I talk about stuff. And
I'm not guarded.
No, yeah.
I'm not guarded.
I know
It's
what
just
you're
that
saying.
I know
what you're saying. Yeah.
Like it's like when I'm working with a sponsee, I don't necessarily need to give you advice, but I will share stories when they're appropriate.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think, you know, what you're reminding me of is how important it is when we're being impeccable with our word is that our actions are aligning with our words.
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
It's like I'm all, it's like this idea of living the boundary that you're setting. It's like if I'm if I'm not living it, like being at the club before it was remodeled, it's like we used to sit around and talk and whatever. Yeah. And it's like with the N-word, you know, I cannot be upset with somebody using it if I'm using it all the time.
Right.
And so as much as I like to use it, I need to be mindful who I'm using it around.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if I'm there, I'm showing you how I want you to communicate with me, how I want you to be with me. And that was a tough lesson because it's like I was thinking, wait a minute, I should be able to do whatever the hell I want to do. But yeah, you can do whatever the hell you want to do, but there are consequences to it. And sometimes the consequences are other people showing you through their actions how fucked up you've been.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, we think about our commitments, right? Like when we say we're going to commit to something, what does that mean? I'm thinking about like ideas of loyalty and integrity.
Yes.
And I think that when our actions don't align with our words, we actually harm ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like we let ourselves down because...
And it's hard to recover because, you know, like when we first come in and we're all of a sudden we're showing up and we're doing whatever and we want people to see that, and we don't understand that they're going to see it when they see it. Yeah. And, you know, especially if we've been feeding them a load of nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, here's the other part of that is that when I say like align words with actions, or I talk about our commitments, I'm not suggesting like this kind of very rigid way of existing or being in relationship, right? Because for example, I may commit to something and then realize, you know what, maybe I can't. Yeah. I can't be committed to this thing anymore. Here's a way that your actions align with your words is like you admit you can't keep that commitment.
No, absolutely. Oh God, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Picking up the damn phone and calling and communicating and saying instead of waiting for things to happen. Something that a lot of folks do, they use the I love you, I love you, I love you. And I think it's, I don't want to say dangerous, but so many people have their own idea of what it means to love. Like some people who say the love have caused more hurt than anything. And so I feel like for me, it's like it has been getting to a place of action, like showing you I love you, not necessarily saying I love you. Like there are some people like I love you. Yeah, there's some people that I'll say it all the time. Yeah, but my actions have to be like kind of like this is how I love you.
Yeah, you know, we only have so many minutes.
I know,
but I know I love those. So I want to talk about like two things. Okay. Like speaking to build and not harm.
Oh, I like that.
You know, and then the last one is like cultivating gratitude. We have to land on gratitude.
Yeah, we do. I think it's good.
I hate gratitude, but we have to. So speaking to, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, go, you say it because I got excited because,
So when before I got sober, I was so fucking nasty, you know, like I found myself, I was just so unhappy and I never had anything nice to say about anyone really. And I was just very prickly. And let me tell you something. when you do stuff like that, you cause people harm.
Oh, absolutely.
You cause people harm. And, I am not suggesting that we get preoccupied with like how people think and feel about us.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that the kind of person you want to be?
Yeah, exactly.
We've talked about this like jokingly before, but like in recovery communities, for example, like we're a really close-knit community, at least in San Francisco. And like what you say can deeply affect the people around you.
Oh, absolutely.
And
it's what's interesting is like, I think that you don't know, it could be something that you just don't think about that affects people. And I think this is where that impeccable part comes in. It's like, okay, I am going to own it. And this is the lesson to learn. I may say it because I don't know, but if we're communicating, if as close as we are, I'm going to own it and then try to amend my behavior.
Yeah. So I want to propose a thing for people listening.
Yeah.
Try.
Yeah. Just
for a week. Just try for a week to, when you're speaking, that you use your words to uplift people.
Yeah. To
uplift. If you use your words to, share kindness, right? There is a way, I'm telling you right now, I can almost guarantee it. If you try and it doesn't work, send us an email and I'll give you a refund.
Yeah.
There is a way that using your words to uplift people and empower people and to spread kindness, that feels so good.
It makes you feel amazing.
It makes you feel amazing.
Yeah.
And I think
it's like a high.
It feels amazing. And I think, our hearts open up and it really can be really transformative. And I think it's for a bunch of different reasons. Part of it could be, I don't know, maybe we're tapping into something spiritual, right? Maybe
we're speaking to the God and other people.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think just as a general rule, it's a good practice to, be careful about like what you're saying about other people. And I think part of that is because the language I use to talk to other people is also the language that I'm using to talk to myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. And then
let's talk gratitude.
Yeah. And then cultivating gratitude. So I think, there's research that shows this. Writing out gratitude lists, being in gratitude, starting from a place of gratitude really does shift how your brain is operating. Yeah.
Focusing in on the things that are good as opposed to just letting those negative, because I mean, if you don't, like if it's not a practice that you're used to, obviously it's going to be easy to kind of pay attention to what's not going right, but paying attention to what is and really kind of celebrating that, or at least just sitting with it and saying, because I could look at my little apartment and say, oh, it's so small, it's not, instead of saying the fact that I have an apartment
and you live in San Francisco.
I live by myself in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so I do that all the time.
In an amazing area.
I know, exactly. I'm my God, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. In an amazing area. But gratitude is another place to start, whenever I do kind of like leadership consulting stuff, I ask people to start with a gratitude before we jump into stuff.
Again, it's going to feel a little hokey or uncomfortable.
I know.
And anything that you haven't been doing actively is going to feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but I think that it's so good for you.
Oh, I could not agree more. I almost said agree less.
Absolutely. I know. I can agree.
So let's land this plane.
Yeah, exactly. So the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help change lives by supporting personal growth.
And our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community opportunity and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us, at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
And get excited because every Monday we release new episodes of the podcast.
Yeah, it's every Monday, huh?
Yeah, wherever you listen. And you can catch them wherever you listen to podcasts.
That's right. We love you.
We love you, yes.
Bye.